Joining us now is U.S. National Security Council spokesman John Kirby. And just as we start our conversation, a source familiar with the matter tells us that the Americans have departed Doha on a U.S. government plane. So, John Kirby, that is good news. Amplify a little for us what was going on, do you think, behind the scenes in your administration when you knew that finally this deal was happening? We heard from Secretary Blinken there.
Yes, this was really the culmination of months and months of work, Christian, as you might imagine. And it just kind of came together over some recent weeks. Now, the parameters of these negotiations always sort of morph and change as you get closer to the end. But as it came out, we think that this was a tough decision by President Biden. It's never an easy decision to make these kinds of negotiations and to have to sit across the table from some folks. But in order to get these Americans home, we're very, very glad to be able to get that done.
Do you know, I know that they underwent at least a cursory quick medical check over. They were given phones. They were able to talk. We understand that the families also and the prisoners released talked to President Biden. So there's been a lot going on in that hour that they have spent, or several hours, on the tarmac in Doha. Do you know their condition at all?
The president did have a chance to speak to the families, and from what we understand, they're in relatively good health. I mean, but look, they were kept in some abhorrent conditions, and so we're not going to just take anything for granted. We'll make sure that they get access to whatever medical and mental health care they need before they, reintegrate back into society. But appear to be in relatively good health, and obviously very, very happy to be released. And we're looking forward to getting them back on U.S. soil.
And do you know anything? I know they want to be private, but can you tell us anything about the two who are not named? How long they have been held, and what is their professions?
No, I'm afraid out of privacy concerns for those two individuals, we're going to try to keep as much detail out of the public eye as we can. But they both were, like the others, wrongfully detained by Iran. And again, we're really happy that we're able to get them too. And I would add that it isn't just the 5 Americans that were wrongly detained, Christian. 2 family members, the wife of one and the mother of another, are also on that plane. So in essence, really 7 Americans are coming home today.
They, of course, were not in jail, but apparently they were not free to leave, and they were there, obviously, visiting their loved ones in jail. Now, we talked a little bit about the politics of this. What do you say about the politics of this when certain Republicans push back? Let me just read you what Senator Lindsey Graham, the Republican, said. I'm always glad when Americans are released from captivity. However, this agreement will entice rogue regimes like Iran to take even more Americans hostage. The Ayatollah and his henchmen are terrorists and truly represent a terrorist state. Well, we know that Republican administrations have engaged in these swaps as well. But what do you say to critics?
What we would say is, number one, let's focus on what really matters here today, and that's that 5 Americans are going to be reunited. Number two, it is not as if the taking of hostages or the detention wrongfully of Americans or other foreigners is a new tactic by the regime. And it's not just Iran that does this. There's other countries around the world that do this as well, including Russia. So it's difficult to say that this particular deal, this particular negotiation is somehow going to change the calculus in that regard. And that is why the State Department has made it very, very clear that Americans, dual nationals in particular, should not be in Iran, should not travel to Iran, should not be there. And if they can make their way out, they certainly should, because it is a particularly dangerous place to go. And then number 3, Christian, it is also not like we're turning a blind eye to Iran's destabilizing behavior, the support for Russia and their war in Ukraine, the attacks on maritime shipping, the support for terrorist networks. I could go on and on and on. We sanctioned some additional entities last week in Iran. We sanctioned some more today as a result of wrongful detention. And we will absolutely continue to hold Iran accountable for their behavior and their conduct in the region.
So I want to know how you will hold Iran accountable for the expenditure of the $6 billion. Now, let's be frank. It is not American money. It is Iranian money that was prevented from being transferred for oil purchase by South Korea. Now, those funds have been, released to Qatar to be carefully used for humanitarian. But you know that President Raisi, who is in New York right now, told NBC something different in Tehran. This is what he said.
This money belongs to the Islamic Republic of Iran, and naturally we will decide, the Islamic Republic of Iran will decide to spend it wherever we need it.
So if I hear you clearly, that it will be used for more than humanitarian purposes in your view?
Humanitarian means whatever the Iranian people needs. So this money will be budgeted for those needs. And the needs of the Iranian people will be decided and determined by the Iranian government.
So is he threading a needle? Is he blustering? How do you guard against that?
I can't speak for how he came to couch it that way, but if he was trying to say that the regime will get access to this money directly, A, or B, that they'll be able to spend it on whatever they want, he's wrong on both counts. The money will not go to the regime. They will not get their hands on any of this. It will be managed in the Qatari National Bank system. They can ask for a withdrawal for humanitarian goods or agricultural products. The system is set up that we will, in concert with the Qataris, we will apply it to vendors who will go purchase the material, medicine, food, agricultural products, and then we'll get it delivered into Iran. The regime will not be able to get their actual hands on this money. And the other thing is, we can stop a transaction if we think that there's something awry with it, and we can refreeze those funds if we think that Iran is, over the long term, going to try to cheat or divert the funds in any way that's inappropriate.
That's because the U.S. Treasury Department has eyes on all of this, right?
That is right. The Treasury Department, this money will be handled in accordance with the requirements that the Treasury Department has laid on. So we'll have visibility. The Qataris will have visibility. We'll be able to monitor how this money is being withdrawn and for what purpose, and we will have ultimate approval authority over that purpose.
Okay. So obviously everybody would like to hope that this means a bigger, better relationship on crucial issues like the nuclear issue, for instance. Where does that stand right now? What is the Iranian understanding or your understanding of where enrichment is going to stay at? Do you have hope for another formal Iranian nuclear deal?
It's important to remember that this deal to get these Americans home is a separate issue done in a completely separate environment through a separate set of diplomatic initiatives, not tied at all to the JCPOA or Iran's nuclear ambitions, or quite frankly, their other destabilizing activities. This is not about trying to build some sort of rapprochement with Iran or to get us back into the Iran deal. That said, the president has been consistent on two things. One, we're not going to allow Iran to ever acquire a nuclear weapon. And two, we'd love to be able to solve that problem diplomatically. But short of diplomacy, and right now the diplomatic efforts are moribund. There's no effort at diplomatic negotiations over this. So in absence of that, we've got to make sure that the president has all the options available to him. We have boosted our military capabilities in the region. We'll make sure that that we've got the kinds of capabilities and the options available to the president should we have to use them. Nobody wants to go that route. Nobody's looking for conflict, of course. But right now, there's no diplomatic effort to get back into the Iran deal.
Can I just swerve onto another very important issue for the administration and the world, and that is supporting Ukraine's defense? We've seen polls that suggest, more Americans now question U.S. aid to Ukraine. We know that the president and President Zelensky will meet tomorrow at the UN. Both are speaking. From your perspective, what do you expect to hear from Zelensky, and what will the response be?
I think, and I don't want to speak for President Zelensky, but I don't think it's a stretch to imagine that he's going to update the international community, and certainly when he gets a chance to sit with President Biden on Thursday, update the president personally about how their counteroffensive is going. It is important to remember that they are making progress. It's not as fast or as far in some places as they would like, but they are making some steady progress. And then number two, I think you'll hear from President Zelensky how much he continues to need international support. U.S. leadership obviously has been key to getting them the arms and the equipment that they need on the battlefield, but it's not just the United States. In fact, just this week, Christian, Secretary Austin at the Defense Department and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs are meeting again in Ramstein, Germany, more than 50 nations in this contact group to develop options for additional support for Ukraine, whether that's in mine clearance, air defense, also armor and ammunition, including artillery. All of those things they still need. And I think you'll hear President Zelensky make a very passionate case for why it's important for the international community to stay behind him. Now, you talked about the fact that some people are starting to worry about whether or not we can continue to do this. The support that we've been getting on Capitol Hill, both bicameral and by a bipartisan way, remains solid and strong. And the president expects that support from Congress will continue. And we also know that the American people know that this isn't just about Ukraine. Certainly, first and foremost, it is, without question. The Ukrainian people matter first and foremost. But it's also about the greater security environment on the European continent. And what happens if Putin just gets to do what he wants, if he just gets to take Ukraine? Where does it stop then? And the cost in blood and treasure to not just the United States and the American people, but to our allies and partners on Europe will be exorbitantly higher if we just walk away from supporting Ukraine in their fight.
A powerful case indeed. John Kirby, thank you very much indeed.